Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in the Frankly Speaking video series on youth participation. We are here today talking with Ditta Trindade, Global Education and Youth Policy Specialist. And with her we are going to discuss a little bit about global education and its relation to youth participation, but also about nexus between global and local youth work and youth participation. Enjoy and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm Slovak. I'm currently based in Bratislava, in Slovakia as well. I work from home for an international organization called GENE, which stands for Global Education Network Europe. And it's a network of ministries and agencies in Europe, ministries of foreign affairs and education, ministries of education, some of which have also responsibility for youth, and development agencies. Well, I worked practically almost my whole life with young people, youth work, later youth policy, youth training, and a little bit also youth research. So I worked also in the triangle of the research, policy, and practice. And I lived in different countries in Europe and in Latin America, in Brazil, mainly working with youth issues from different angles and different points of my career, I guess. I was also engaged with e-learning when it only started, and developed a number of kind of initiatives that were a bit ahead of its time for young people globally. And I passed through several youth organizations and engaged with several international organizations, regionally or globally. But I'm also still part of the pool of trainers of the Council of Europe in the field of youth. And I enjoy always discussing, the challenges and the possibilities and the new trends among young people. We define global education based on a declaration that was done in 2002, so some time ago in Maastricht. And we define it as an education that opens the minds and hearts of people to the realities of today's world, understanding the global issues and its, the local issues and its global dimension, trying to bring more understanding, human rights, global justice to all. It's a kind of education, it's a policy term that has been created to encompass the global, local dimensions of other types of educations which before were not so much connected, such as the education for sustainable development, human rights education, intercultural education, peace education, development education. So all these sorts of different educations that, you had somebody who worked on environmental education and somebody on the other hand from human rights education, and they would use similar approaches, but they would never talk or they would never meet. And in global education, we also work in terms of policy with all education settings. That means from early childhood education through all the formal schooling, that means primary, secondary education, university education, preparation of teachers, initial teacher training, on-job training for teachers, and so forth, as well as non-formal education and informal learning, which includes youth work or youth as a specific sector within the non-formal education. Lately, there has been a greater call to enhance global education and active global citizenship among youth, also in a recent declaration by the European Council, which calls for strengthened global education and DEAR, which is development, education, and awareness raising with youth, that would include training, youth work activities, human rights activities, sustainable development, good governance, and to support young people's engagement in responding to global challenges. So this is something that we stand for, and we try in my organization to support. And kind of our key mission is to work until the day where all people in Europe, in solidarity with people globally, would have access to quality global education. So for us, global education should be at heart of any good education, because actually it talks about the interconnectedness of understanding the bigger picture, of making links of what's going to, of what's going happen, of what's happening at the local level, and understanding how that influences the global level and other countries and so forth. Since, let's say, the 2000s, where this education has been promoting at large conceptually, there has been many developments. And while before, let's say 20 years ago, only some governments would have heard the term or would have some budgets, I can say that in Europe, many more governments have considerable budgets or some budgets, understand the policies related to these types of education. And, you know, I would say that even the Agenda 2030 has helped in this process. The work on the SDG, in particular, the SDG goal 4.7, that talks about the global citizenship, education for global citizenship, has brought many different stakeholders and many policymakers to focus also on this issue. Of course, when you talk about sustainability, we can say, yeah, but this is so marginal, this is so, you know, just on the edge of mainstream education. But through a number of activities, and I know that it's a bit tricky to give Finland always as an example, but 10 years ago, Finland, in terms of policy terms, has decided to take really global education at the heart of its education system. And actually, they have incorporated it in all streams of education. And they update also the curricula very often to consider the most recent, let's say, global challenges and local challenges, and rework it, which of course brings also other types of stress on the whole system. But there are countries where actually, by taking this to the heart of policymaking, this has a huge impact on the whole society. Countries that have also made huge advance incorporating this also in the formal education sector, but also in youth work, through a large multi-stakeholder process is, for instance, Portugal. Where they call it DEAR, and we respect in GENE, you know, all the different terminology that is used at the national level. So in Portugal, it's called Educação para o Desenvolvimento, which is development education in translation. And they have really, the process took 2 years, but they really came up with a strategy and an action plan that brings development or global education at all levels, including youth work. Youth, in this sense, has been, when we look at the youth structures, a little bit divisive. There are organizations, whether national youth councils or European youth organizations or even local organizations, that work with this theme and with these concepts on a regular basis. It's their priority. Just to give an example, the Irish National Youth Council, this is really their forefront agenda at the national level, but also at the European level. This is what they bring to the international dialogues, to the European Youth Forum, but also globally through their policy activism at the UN level. And there are other organizations at a European level, traditionally in terms of education and youth work, is the Scouts. There is the AFS or AFIL. Several youth organizations really have this now as their priority. Not all, and I think in terms of European youth training structures, there is still quite some space to strengthen this dimension, and I think the call of the European Council for more active global citizenship and global education is really something that may help even to, how shall I say, revive or reactivate local youth work, which is busy traditionally with certain themes that are relevant at a very local level. But I think making young people feel connected with global issues and other relevant issues that they may feel the impact of at a local level or national level, but they don't necessarily have the spaces to talk about this or express this, would even enhance more youth participation, even in maybe, local life, in municipal life, because it broadens the perspective of what is traditionally understood as youth work. And that may be something useful. Tricky questions, because I think it depends, right? What young people we are talking about, in what contexts. I can give you an example more from young people who work rather in regions and rural areas comparing to urban. We have recently supported through my work a training of young multipliers, but existing already local youth work educators and trainers in Slovakia, who mainly focus on non-city areas or small city areas, because actually 65% of young people in Slovakia live in small rural areas. And they were from different organizations, and they very much welcomed tools, trainings, contents, new contents, even when we talk, about human rights or something that they worked on, but adding on this local global perspective and adding some themes in relation to human rights, such as, the ever-heated discussion about migration and refugees and so on. And Slovakia has been very resistant, but also looking at the fact that actually we didn't accept any refugees and we have very low migration, but still it's like a big threat. So, helping young people to understand in terms of human rights, in terms of intercultural understanding, in terms of global solidarity, issues that are global, that are, let's say, projected in some way in the media, but still how to really engage with these themes when you, in your surroundings, don't have necessarily diversity. So I think many of these youth workers welcomed the themes and the way to actually discuss this and develop interactive activities with young people on these themes, have enabled them to really also get to what really is an issue for many young people, although it's unexpressed because it is in the families, it is in the media, it is in their surroundings, but they don't really have so much opportunities to really give their not only opinion, but also engage in a thought process and express their feelings in relation to that in a kind of a safe environment, which youth work is. And the responses were very positive. I think nowadays, in order for young people to really go out there and reach out to the local young people, it's important to really value them and their work. And we managed even to kind of give them a little support, financial support, so that you really can go and implement the activities. And that was like for the first time they received, like maybe 200 or I don't know how many euro to really do the work with young people, which enabled them, maybe to get some photocopies and so on. But this kind of support is also very much needed. And I'm always like promoting that, when we talk about youth work training, it doesn't come as something granted that young people just do, but they really valued for that. And if possible, also, even if it's symbolical, remunerated for what they do. I think intergenerational dialogue has become something that is absolutely needed in our world. Whether we discuss, the sustainable development agenda, whether we discuss the future of our planet, or whether we discuss the national policies in terms of whatever, development, education, economy. I think without having the different generations of people heard and work together, and the different expertise assigned to the different generations, we are certainly losing out. What I would like to also say is that for me, it is crucial that we do not omit the newest generations that are raising their voices and include them in a dialogue. Whether it is in youth work, where often, although we can make a great effort, but it's so easy to omit the younger generations of youth workers, of youth trainers, of youth researchers. And it's always important to make an effort to include those in the spaces of dialogue, as well as at a more international level. And I think this is really important and key to have, even in structures, when we think about youth structures, and we know who are the traditional stakeholders there. But we sometimes forget that we are in a society that is ever developing, and there are ever new structures emerging that respond to the needs of the young people today, the younger young people, the adolescents that are getting organized in new ways that we sometimes don't consider because we didn't experience it, we didn't know it then. And although I can consider myself a experienced youth worker, I don't know of all the emerging youth voices being raised and youth activities and so forth. So unless we make an active effort to include those new emerging networks, initiatives, representatives of these new young voices, we'll be always behind and losing out. I have two messages. One is in relation to how can we bring the global dimension of non-formal, even in non-formal education, but of global education. I mean, how can we bring this global local interconnectedness at the heart of education? Because I think whether we look at the formal system of education, we are somewhere still, we have so much to do in the education field. And I think youth work is one path which is fairly flexible, which doesn't have much resources, but have, let's say, increasing resourcing. And I think we should really equip ourselves better to enter also in much more qualified dialogue with the formal education sector, and bring these two kind of together so that they really work together in all senses. So this is kind of my plea. And then I have a second one. I have recently became a chair of a kind of it's a social business, but it's an organization called masterpiece.org that works towards peace through art, culture, but also youth work, and also youth work. And we are just launching a campaign that is called, and now I stand up, 7 Billion Strong. And it's a campaign that actually invites everyone, whether it's an individual or an institution, whether it's a youth organization or a business or startup, to bring out messages of how we are strong together in terms of resilience, what are the organizational talent or the individual talents to bring it out forth. And these messages are being collected and will be, first of all, the hype date is the 21st of September, which is International Peace Day. And then after that, there will be even a second moment, which will be the 75th anniversary of the UN. And that is on the 24th of October, where we hope to really connect, hopefully, the 7 billion of people globally. But even if it's like a little less, it will be still a good movement to go for. So if you can, please connect to the hashtag 7 billion strong. Thank you very much.